to present this evening online. But I'm very happy to be able to welcome our new speakers of today, Koen Baeyens and Graux, of the office Graux Baeyens Architects, and Tom Frantzen of the office Frantzen et al. Let me shortly describe this lecture series. It's since more than 6 years that we are going on now with this series. And we have had numerous amounts of speakers, of architects that have been deliberating about their work always every evening in a double lecture in which the two different offices, the two different speakers give a vision about how they work on architecture. And for this specific lecture series, we do not really ask them to show all their work and all their beautiful images, but to really focus onto the making of architecture, how the architecture come into being, how they work on their project within their offices. And it's very interesting also to know that every time we also have a clear view how the office is organized and the diversity of different kinds of offices. So as there are many students online tonight, I'm sure that you will learn a lot that being an architect is not a one-way direction, it's also a choice of how to elaborate on your work. Well, here you can see all the posters of the last 6 years of the lecture series organized by Anarchy, the study association of our faculty at TU Eindhoven, and me myself being professor of the chair of architectural design and engineering at the faculty in Eindhoven. In this series that will be 3 evenings in, well, today of course, and also in February and also in March, we'll have different, very international also speakers for the first time. We'll have tonight, as said, Baeyens and Graux architects, Tom Frantzen. In February, we'll have Peter Singen from Caruso Singen and Mechthild Stoelmacher from Korteknie Stoelmacher Architects. And then in March, we'll have here welcoming Monat Nok, Job Flores and Nuno Mateus from Portugal from the office RX. Well, let me first shortly describe what you can expect tonight. So first, of course, my short introduction. Well, I'm Juliette Bekkering, co-organizer, but tonight also the moderator of the evening. We'll start with a lecture by Koen Baeyens and Graux. And well, it's the first time that we have a duo lecture in a duo presentation. So they will be presenting their work together. After that, we'll have a short break. And after that, a lecture by Tom Frantzen. The evening is going to be concluded with questions, a Q&A. So prepare your questions and I hope we'll have a vivid discussion. And I just heard from Tom Frantzen that he experienced that in this online era, that we are having lectures online and not live, that apparently it's easier to ask questions. So feel free and ask all the questions that you have. Well, let me shortly introduce the two offices of tonight. Firstly, when you see this poster, you see making architecture. It's of course about making the process of making the actual building from design till the executed project and building. And this year, for the first time, we also call them the LISA lectures. And they are being part of the new European Bauhaus. So there will be also part of the European, the new European Bauhaus, which is a collaboration of all architecture offices, institutes, universities, European-wide, and they will be also featured online on this platform. So that is new for the first time. I'm very proud about that. Let me shortly introduce Basil and Koen to you. They have an office, they're based in Flanders, in Ghent. And well, they are really focusing within their work on, well, really the making of architecture with great attention for detail and for the elaboration and insertion in the location of their projects, where they really look into all the different details and how the distinct architectural project can fit within a location and give a contemporary answer to the question that their customers are asking. They have been realizing in the last years, 15 years, a range of houses, single-family houses, offices, but also furniture and small objects. So it's a variety of projects that I've been realizing. And lately they also have been awarded many prizes. So I just got a list of all the prizes that have been receiving in the past years, from the Belgian Building Awards in 2020, Provincial Architecture Award 2019, European Copper in Architecture Award in 2017, and many more. I will not mention them all. Well, I hope that they will show us in detail how they work on their projects. And one interesting thing also is to mention that on the moment they're also building their own office, where they're reconverting an all industrial building into their custom-made office where they will be working from in the future. After Koen and Basil, we'll have a lecture by Tom Frantzen. And well, interesting to know is, of course, that as you can read also, that Tom Frantzen is an alumnus of TU Eindhoven. So we are very proud of Tom, that he now shares his his career and everything that he has been doing the last years with us. He has been graduating cum laude in '95. After graduating, he started working at Ton Venhoeven Architects, and very soon later with Bert Dirks. And after 1.5 years, he started his own office. And interesting is also to know that he started off his own office after winning the Charlotte Keuler Prize, which was a kind of start for his office. And then he came into contact with a developer, and then he decided in 2009 to found a new office, Lemniscate project, with building manager Klaus Ossorum, and they started to develop their own project. So from purely an architect, he became also a developer. And within that scope of this kind of new direction that architects can also develop into, where they are not just designing the project, but also executing it and developing it and doing the whole trajectory. That, of course, is a totally new, or is a different way of having a studio. Well, it's also interesting that in 2018, one of their projects, now I can't remember, it's not Catch 22, but it's Patch 22, sorry. The Patch 22 project in Amsterdam won the Golden Pyramid, which is actually the biggest prize for a developer in the Netherlands. So from one hand, as developer and as architect, he was awarded prizes. And well, also in this project, he developed new concepts about building with wood, building high-rise, and building also in a very sustainable way. So of course, I'm very curious to hear all the projects about that he has been developing in the last years. So I think that now you know a little bit about the speakers of tonight, and I would like to give the word to Koen and Basile.
Hi, Jet. Thank you for this introduction. Do you understand us? Do you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Perfect. Yes. Okay. First of all, I'm gonna thank you for the invitation. For us, it's always a great pleasure for to have a moment to reflect on the work we're doing, because usually we're so caught up in the work itself that we don't find the time to actually take a step back and to see what we have done for the last couple of years. So that gives us again a nice opportunity to do that. The lecture is actually divided in the first part that Koen and I will explain a little bit the history about the office, how it grew from a small office to a medium-sized office and the kind of projects we do. And then throughout 4 projects, we're gonna try to explain to you what's the spatial contexts the Flanders is that we work in, and how we implement our vision of architecture into this project and in this field of the context of the Flanders. So voila. All right. So the title is Architecture in Dialogue. Koen and I, we know each other already a few years. That means that we met in university. That's 21 years ago, I think. And but it's actually after we graduated that Koen and I started to work together, because we were both in our internship. We were doing small projects. We were very ambitious, and so we did some refurbishment of kitchens and bathrooms, each separated from each other, so on its own. And also our internship was separated. But as young men do when they are 23, they go a lot to the pub. So that's where we met and discussed all our projects. Pretty quick, we felt that as a sort of chemistry. That's the added value from the different background he has towards mine really mixed well. We were very critical about the things we were doing, but also it helped us to get this projects we did separately to a higher level. So the idea came, of course, organically from that point to try to do the next projects together. So the way we work here, the way we work is a pretty logical fact, actually, how we think. It's based on dialogue. First of all, we try to analyze the situation, every project, as closely as possible, and certainly try to distillate the right questions, because only through these right questions we think we can try to create a relevant answer. And the only way to do that is to dialogue verbally, but also by drawings and by model making and testing our ideas and trying to find out what actually makes this project so unique, the settings. And these questions helps us to formulate an interesting answer to it. So for us, the signature or DNA of the office is not a sort of formal one. It's more a way, a process we work in. And that means that every project has different parameters. So that means the cost can be different, the clients, his brief, the context we're working in, the orientation, everything can be different. So throughout this process of dialoguing, searching this, we always came up to a point where the whole puzzle comes to one fitting point, And for us, that's automatically results in a visual different projects, because all these parameters are different. We don't think that the same kind of formal answer can fit all these different parameters. Another thing that's maybe important to know, that is, for us, there is no boundary between architecture or interior architecture or environments. For us, it's one big story. As you know, we live 365 days a year inside. So for us, a lot of the projects start from the inside and evolve towards the shields around it, this living space, so the architecture. And we try to continue this story towards the environment, to have vistas, to block vistas, to create spaces in the garden. So for us, that's one story to tell, actually. So all the projects you see, the interior design fits the rest of it. Here you see some different projects we're working on at this moment. That reflects actually what I just said. Every project is different, the material choice, the settings. So that's the point where we find most interesting. Our office grew from 2 guys working together, the chemistry between 2 people, and evolved during the years to a team of 9. And we tried to have this same approach, the same process that we had together with the rest of the team, and an extension also with different partners we work in. Of course, the structural engineer is a very important part in our communication, but also the technical engineer, and first of all, our staff. Without them, it would be impossible to do only the 6 projects that we do a year, because we like to put a lot of energy and a lot of time actually in this research, this design research, and to testing our ideas to the fullest, to be sure that it's good. And all these partners helps us together with the client also to get it really to a higher level. And that is the way we like to work.
So another very important pillar of our office, next to the design research we do, is also that there's a lot of time and effort put into the projects on the construction side. So we do our construction sites ourselves together with our team. We go once a week or twice a week, as much as it takes. And there's a lot of dialogue also on the site with the guys who are actually building it. The relationship we have with them is very important to us. We want also their opinion on the project, how they would build it. We always have our own visions of how we would build it, but we don't use it as something the contractor is obliged to, but we use it as a starting point to start a discussion with them, to create an open discussion of how we can create something with the best results. This is actually what our current office, where we are sitting now, looks like. As you can see, we do not have a clean desk policy or anything like that. For us, it's not a showroom or something like that. It's more of a workspace. It's our studio. It's actually the creative space where also the contractors come in to discuss everything. Also the clients and the engineers and all the other people who work together. They come over and have these discussions about the project in the middle of the office with all the models and all the sketches and all the books around them. That's also the same atmosphere that we want to create in our new office. Those are 2 pictures from the construction site. How it looks now, it's an old warehouse where we will try to do the same thing as we are working now. One large open space where you are being invited as a client, as a contractor, in the middle of the creativity to have a nice dialogue about the project and how we can come up with the best results.
All right. The first project, House NDP. What's typical for us about this project is actually the level of trust that was created between the clients and us as an architect. It's a very important key to get a nice result, to elevate the projects to a high end. So the brief was actually very simple. He bought a plot with a small house, but the house itself wasn't technically good enough to keep. It was certainly not big enough. He wanted a house for his family, together with his wife. And for him, this project was also, because it was started in 2012, at that point, the sustainable elements were also already muchly involved into architecture, but were certainly on a technical base. So he wanted all the solar panels, the insulation, the heating pump, and everything included. But the part where it was a little bit strange for us, that is his vision on how the architecture should have looked. And he wanted a white cube with black windows. And if you know, maybe not, in Belgium, that's already 15 years, a sort of a fashion thing to have a modern house is a white cube with black windows. But it didn't scare us off, because when we were talking to them, we quickly remarked that it was not a lack of ambition on architecture, but much more a lack of knowledge about architecture. And so through this conversation we had and the analysis of the situation there, we quickly noticed for ourselves that this typical way of creating windows wasn't actually the element that could help us resolve one of these parameters, the questions. And the clients trusted us enough to just let us do. And that resulted actually in a very interesting project for us. So I'll help you through it. So on the right side, you see our projects, and the two neighbors, the two on the left, were actually this kind of architecture he started with, both of them, of course, his wife too, to like. So as you can see, there was a big step in between those two kind of architecture. But the reason why our building looks this way is one of the facts that the closeness of the neighbors was a very important element. We didn't want to create shuttered, blind facades. And from the other side, we also wanted to have a beautiful vista towards the back of the garden and to the front over the canal that connects actually two cities. The city of Mechelen is really close by, but over the canal we have beautiful views on the wetlands, on the fields. So the client bought his plot because it's only 10 minutes by bicycle from his work. So and of course the views, and it's made on the junction in between the canal and the slung plots. An important element for making our decisions was this dike. It's pretty high, it's practically 1 story high, so it's a natural thing then to elevate the living areas to the first level. That leaves actually the ground floor pretty open as a sort of a canopy to invite people in. And as you can see, the form of this building was actually to create diagonal views towards the surroundings and to block actually other views. So we create an openness and a closeness in the same way. And the fact how this difference in going up changes was actually to open a little bit more towards the neighbors, to let the light more into the for each level. And this canopies creates also the possibility to have terraces on each level. So this is a ground floor. So the main constructive element is the 4 bearing walls. That's set on 2 points with a core that stabilizes the whole structure. Certainly on the first floor, you see that all the living areas are situated around it. And you can see here, that creates actually the possibility to have a more introvert space towards more open space. And this intimacy is what we were really looking for without actually blocking your neighbor. So throughout these diagonal views, you have continually connection towards your neighbor, but certainly creating a direction towards the water and the back. And by having these terraces, you can have an outside space, of course, but you create also a relationship with people walking there or bicycling. And we find it also interesting in architecture to create this kind of interaction between different groups. Here is underneath this canopy, the way you actually come in, it invites you, it creates a sort of a transition of public to private. Also the way the light plays into the structure, we really love it. Has sort of a mystique around it. The entrance itself, and from the back, it's also kids. They have now 3 kids. They use it. They also play outside even when it rains. So it's a sort of a multifunctional space. And on the upper level, like I said, you have the main core with all the technical elements are put into the stairs, but also the techniques, the cloakrooms, and so far. And so we have open spaces that are completely situated towards the terraces, and on the more intimate space, like the dining area and the sitting area, are more into the closed enclosed space. So some view of the living room, and then the vistas towards the water. For us, the fact that we work in concrete is a combination of different factors. The form of the building, let's say that concrete is an answer to the fact that it's construction-wise, it's the best answer to have all the forces towards these points, and the simplicity to have it in concrete. Also the textures, because we worked with the wooden planks, we could create a nice texture. For the small story, we also put a nail in between each plank so that the concrete is going a little bit into these openings. And when the light is really getting close to it at night, you can really have these shadows playing on it. And so form, texture, and architecture and stability also come together here in this concrete building. So as you can see in these images too, this is the bearing structure of this house. We like the fact that it's as a casco, as an empty shell. You could actually do whatever you want with it. We see that sustainability is not always, and the fact that you can use the technical evolutions into a building, and maybe concrete is now a material that is, that we have to be careful when to use or not. But in this situation, we think sustainability is in the fact that a house can be used for several generations, and the flexibility inside a structure is sometimes very important and gives the opportunity to everybody to use it as they see for the future. And here we have two images. The reason why we like the left one is because the scale of the building in comparison to the boat and the canal is, we all loved it. And on the right side is just a beautiful picture that the photographer took, and is a great reminder of this project.
For this next house, House Baeyens, is something completely different. We wanted to show this project as well, especially after the concrete one you saw before. because it's a totally different approach. In this project, you can see how much the context, how important it is for us, and to how it helps us to choose which architecture we will use for the building. In this situation, it's a rural hamlet on the outside of Ghent. Very typical, very small village with very small houses, old farmhouses. The house you are seeing on the picture is actually the house that the owner asked us to demolish to create a new house in this small rural hamlet. We had long conversations with the client that we did not want to demolish this house. We thought it fitted really well in the structure of the small village. And we were also very intrigued about the clustering of the main house and the little houses, the sheds that are built around it. So we came up with the idea that we wanted to create a new volume in the same atmosphere and in the same cluster pattern as the three little houses that are already there. So instead of creating one big volume, we divided the volume into two wings, two additional wings. On the right side of the pictures, you can see the three small houses that were already there, the sheds and the farmhouse. And on the left side, you can see already one of the wings that have been attached to the house. We chose to create a patio in the middle of the three volumes to bring in light and also to make the circulation very interesting. It also gave us the opportunity to have different relationships with the surroundings from the different wings. So we have one on the left side, which has lots of relationship with the garden, because there's a slight slope of the landscape. The upper volume is being dug into the ground. As you can see here, we put a lot of effort in maintaining the old house, or what was there that we could use. It would have been maybe a lot easier to just demolish it and build it new, but we very often choose not to do so, because we believe that a lot of small details or a lot of patina is wasted once you demolish it and rebuild it. So here you can see pictures of the patio that has been put inside the three volumes. This patio allowed us to create three volumes that are separate from each other and have their own identity. As you can see here, we sketch a lot, we make a lot of 3D cardboard models, but we also put all of our houses into 3D models, which allows us to maintain a very clear image for the contractors, although sometimes the building is more than just some straight lines. So here you can see the outside from the three volumes, the way they work together. It's hard to tell which one are the old ones and which one are the new ones. This is the inside of each of the three wings. On the left side, you have the night wing with the stairs to the bedrooms, and the center picture, you can see the living room with a new fireplace, but everything has been designed in the same atmosphere of the old farmhouse, but a new interpretation of it. And on the right side, you can see the old farmhouse that's been renovated and changed into the kitchen and dining area, where we chose to keep the wooden structure as an element. On this last picture, you can see on the left side, there's the house that we renovated, and you can see why it was so important for us that our architecture was not a statement of somehow, but it respected the hamlet, it respected the environment, because we believe that as architects, you can choose to either choose for the confrontation, but we more often prefer to appreciate what is actually there and show some love for the site where you are building.
The next project is one of densification. What I mean by that is that in Belgium, since a few years, we have, they call it the concrete stop. And that means that the government has decided not to engage on creating new housing on freestanding plots anymore. So the idea, or the main idea, is to use the rest parcels, the rest plots in between existing houses, and to densify actually these areas. So in this particular case, the client bought a very small plot in Flanders. That's only, I think, 18 by 23. It's located in a rural context and on the slope. So these elements are very important. As you can see on the scheme on the left, there's a farm in front of it, but the open views next to it are also pretty interesting. So here we have the farm. We choose here to create new architecture, a new building construction that's evokes the architecture typical for this region. So the pitched roof is an archetype that is used all over Europe. It's especially also in Flanders. And in this case, also the chimney. We like the idea of chimneys. And in this particular case, we exaggerated it to a certain level that for us works really well. The use of the materials, for example, here, the steel undulated plates, is also a small reference to all the barns that are built in this area. The main, how you say, division of the house is that we have, because it's on a slope and it's partly dug into the ground, we created a concrete basement of base, where on top you could work with a more open wooden structure. Also, here you see a plan of the ground floor. We choose to have better views on the surroundings, to have the more intimate parts of the house, a bedroom, bathroom, and so far, and also maybe not intimate, but practically the practical stuff as the techniques, we put them in the basement. So in this rigid square plan, we have a central core where the staircase is, and around it are all kinds of different functions. And the entrance is placed on the back of the house. So here you see the core with the staircase. These elements from naked brick or painted brick with the concrete floor and ceiling is a reflection actually of this more introvert basement architecture, where we like to work with the clair-obscur, this intimacy that really works well with the functions we have there. And the smaller windows, the light for us is really stronger just by making sometimes a little bit smaller. So it has a whole different feeling to it than on the first level. So a view on, excuse me, the ground floor, the bathroom. And then we have this central core, the staircase that connects the ground floor with the first floor. And there we experimented a little bit with the materials, the brick on itself. So we choose to cut it actually in two. So we have this vertical lines that are really visible, and sometimes with this blackness on it. And by masoning it on this way, we get a texture that's really rough together with this nice slick staircase. We find it works pretty well. So the first floor are the living areas. It's an open plan, and in this pitched roof, we made 2 incisions that allowed us to create vistas towards the environment and also some terraces. Here we have the kitchen, and as you can see, it's a combination structurally in between wood, concrete, and bricks. We wanted this light construction method to be visible, and a lot of our projects, the structure or the way we build our houses, we like to show it also because it's part of the architecture. The honesty in the way we approach architecture. We want to let it through to the all the layers of the architecture itself. So here we have some preliminary drawings we made for how we saw the structure. And as you can see, the concrete basement insulated from the inside, then the tectonic of the timber structure on top of it. How could we stack it? It has more than just a structural element, but that can be a visual element. How the light plays in between all these different elements. And here's some renderings, how we saw in the beginning the structure. And from that point on, we sat together with a structural engineer, and yeah, it becomes a really interesting dialogue in between us because we have a certain vision how we want to have it, and he adds something to it, so that with that information we can play again, and that it's a sort of a ping pong in between us, and it gets it to a higher level than what we should have done if we did it individually. So we really like this ping pong idea. So these are some pictures from the site. The main idea stays, but sometimes wooden beams were changed in concrete beams. The sections sometimes has played a different role into the architecture. But the end results, we really love it.
For this last project, we wanted to talk to you about how important it is for us, the relationship we have with our clients, and more in specific, their input they have in the project. Very often, new clients, they ask us the question, how come our portfolio is so different? Most of the time, they like some of our projects when they go to the website. And on the same time, there are other projects they don't like at all when they have a look at the website. Most of the time, we can reassure them that that's fine, because what is important to Basil and I is that we have our vision on architecture, but we want every project to be something else. And so it's really important for us that the personality of the client or the DNA of the client gets mixed up with our own DNA and how we think about the project. So this next project is very interesting to show you how the two personalities can combine very well. It's a studio we were asked to make for an artist, Steve de Smet. He creates very nice sculptures, and his work is very much inspired by also the rural context of Flanders, of the small villages, of the fields. He has a very romantic approach to his art, which suits very well with the way we think about building in Flanders and appreciating what is there, being very curious about the context that we are building in. So this is actually a picture from a magazine we got last week where Steve is approaching his new studio. This is actually the situation before we started our design. What you see is the house where he lives in, and the small buildings on the sides are his workplaces. He was in need of a larger studio, a larger space to create larger art. And the plot he had in mind was at the end of the garden, there was a pig stable that we could demolish and create something new. The little white building you see with the red door was also to be torn down to create space to make something new. So on this site plan, you can see the 3 buildings that were already there. And of course, the question was how and where will you create the 4th volume, the large volume that he needed to create his large pieces of art. Immediately, it was very clear that we wanted the inner courtyard was very important, but as well as the garden at the back was also equally important to the residents. So that's why we started to play with the volume, with this large volume. We decided to twist it and see how it would work to create a more openness to the yard that is behind. So here you see some of the design sketches that we use to communicate with ourselves. These are most of the time internal sketches. Those are not even the sketches that get shown to the client. It's just the way that we speak to each other here in the office. You can see in these little sketches how we are trying to come up with a large building that would fit these 3 existing buildings. So since we already liked what was there and we already loved the rural context, we tried to come up with volumes, a large volume in the center and then some smaller volumes around it. And we use it to, we used some ready-mades, the polysol, how do you call it? The concrete elements that divide the gardens from the other plots. We tried to use those. We found them very inspiring. But to give you an idea about this relationship we have with the client said no. He liked this large volume in the middle, but he really did not like these sheds, these fences, these concrete fences we wanted to put around it. For us, it was really important because it created a sort of indoor-outdoor space, but he said no. So we had lots and lots of interesting talks. And then we decided that, okay, since the garden fencing had to go, we still needed something to make a nice continuity from the buildings that were already there to this large volume. So we decided this white volume with the red door from in the beginning of the story, we decided to keep it. We made it gray, so you could see the original concrete block that was behind it. And instead of creating one large 4th volume, only one large volume, we even created 2 extra volumes. So here you can see the concept drawing of this large volume, which is the studio. In this little drawing, you can already see that for us it was really important that we created something that was on the scale of the art with some large doors to bring in the art, to bring in the light. But in the meantime, also create some really small elements, small windows, small doors to bring in the scale of the artist. So here you can see at the back of this large volume that we created this really small annex in the same concrete brick that was already there in the shed. We reused this material. In the plan you can see the large square that has been rotated to create views and vistas to the back of the large garden, but also 2 annexes, one for a little kitchen and toilet and stuff like that, and then one at the back of the atelier, of the studio, a little library and a place of contemplation. So here you can see the workshop of the artist, very high ceiling. And what we love to do is that the concrete elements that we use, such as beams and cantilevers or concrete plinths or benches, we use them to create an atmosphere on the interior. So there's no difference between interior or exterior for us. But on the other hand, we love to play with putting a window behind the metal beam to make an accent of it. So here you see the large windows, but then again in the ceiling, a very small window to bring in some different light. And on the left side, a very small window to have a view. This is the relationship you have from the large studio on scale of the art, to go to the library, which is behind it, a very small entrance to the study room. Thanks. This is the window we created in the corner. For us, this project is not only about scale for art or scale for the people, but it's also about the story we tell. It's also about creating little niches, little places, little storylines in the larger concept. So here at the end of the plot, on the end of the large hall, we created a window which is actually too low to be able to see through. Your eye line is directly onto the concrete beam, so you have to approach it, you have to sit down, the concrete bench invites you to take a seat, and then you can enjoy the second part of the garden, which is behind the building. And this is a totally different atmosphere in the study of the artist, where he can write and read his books. Not a large, very small shed. We used wood to create a different atmosphere. And here you can see the relationship we have with the surrounding rural landscape. It's important to have nice neighbors that come and have a look inside from time to time when you are working. And this is actually now how the place is being used. Sometimes after everything was finished, Steve, the artist, he invites a lot of times musicians to create music in there, because the acoustic is very good in this high room. And what we love about this picture is that it shows that architecture for us in the first place, it's about the space, it's about the atmosphere. And once that is correct, once that story has been told, we believe that the function will follow afterwards, and it's no problem once it changes. So that's that. Thank you for listening.
So, thank you very much. Yeah, we can't hear all the clapping, so put your microphone on. Well, we see a lot of hearts, smiles, etc., so that's great. Thank you so much in this new era of different kinds of giving how do you go, expression to your thoughts. Yeah, thank you very much, Basil and Koen. Wonderful work. A lot of questions I have already, but I will save them for later. I propose that we have a short break, and we'll see everybody in 10 past 8. So 15 minutes for getting a coffee, a beer, and then I will get my glass of wine, so that although we are not close, we can still have toast later. So thank you for listening, and rejoin us in 15 minutes. See you later. So, hello, we are back. Sharp on time, that's a good thing about working in teams. Always straight on time. Well, Tom, I see you are already there and ready to launch you already can launch your presentation. You are still muted. Okay, well, Tom, welcome. Floor is yours.
Okay.
The screen is yours, so we should adapt our vocabulary, I think.
All right. Well, thank you for inviting me back to the university. It's been 26 years since I left. I've been back a few times as a tutor or giving lectures. But again, it's always a pleasure to be there. Let's see. You can see my screen now.
No, we
Not
still
yet.
can see the one of Baeyens
sorry.
and Koen. Maybe.
Yeah, that's this one.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. So this is me on the left. Since 2009, I have a very small office. Before that, I used to have a bigger office with a big team. But in 2009, I changed my the way I organized my business, and I work in a network environment now. So I'm always added to a team, and that's why I'm the man in black, and the rest of the team is always in white, and they can be different in every project. And that's also the name of my company. Et al. Is Latin for and others, and it's the abbreviation you always write on the back of the back at the name of the first author when he writes a scientific article. So in fact, the name of my company is Frantzen and others. I think making architecture, it requires three things. So we're not talking about people, profit, planet. Today we're talking about position, power, and profit. I think you need these three in one way or the other to be able to make architecture. And as a young architect, you can do this by winning competitions. After you've won a competition, you have a position in a project, and so you have power to make decisions. For me, the first competition I won was in the second year at the university. It was a competition for birdwatching height in Groningen, and I was lucky enough to win as a second year student. And I invested a year in this building. I didn't study for a year. Of course, it is like studying, but it didn't join the normal study program. I made all the drawings to build this project. And in the end, all the drawings were finished. And we found out that the client who organized this competition, they didn't have enough money to build it. So there went this whole building. Then the result of my study year was no building at all. But I found out what this client actually needed. They needed a lot cheaper building, one that was a lot smaller and that they could assemble and disassemble on various locations. So when I found that out, I thought I'm going to design one and then just build one, and then I'm going to sell it. So this is the design I did together with Vaas Mone, who is still working at the university. He was at that time lecturing as a structural engineer, was specialized in timber. And I designed a very small project with a red window, and the red window is meant to be able to take your position in the bird watching height, see where the action is, and then sit down, and then you can look through the slit. And the glass is colored red because birds cannot see through red. Then I had it made. And it was actually built. And the way I did it was I got a 10,000 euro subsidy from the province of Utrecht, and I used it to commission the building of the birdwatching hut, and I sold it for 20,000 euros. And it was demolished very fast. The building was ready, and it was delivered to the client, and they only had to assemble it. So they assembled it. Turned out in the wrong place, in a place too close to the neighboring village. And in this short period that I was on a holiday, the local youth, they enjoyed the red window very much, and they sort of literally fucked this building up. Another project that came out of a competition was this building in 's-Hertogenbosch. And the funny thing was, in the jury report, they said this building can survive even without the basement. And in the brief of this competition, there was no basement asked, but we added a basement to this competition because we thought this tiny triangular plot is really too tiny to build a successful office space on the lowest floor, especially when you also need circulation space to enter all the apartments on the top 4 floors. So what we did was we added a whole space underneath the street with a bay window to the historical canals of 's-Hertogenbosch. And we thought that was the key factor. The extra turnover from this self-leased extra underground office space is what made it possible to build this building. Because without this extra underground office space, you would never, ever would have been able to get a good business plan. So what we found out is that if you want to stand out in the crowd, you have to stand outside the crowd. That is also a strategy that is very helpful during competitions. In 2005, I entered the Stockholm City Library competition, and with my office, we did one of these big competitions every year. So we didn't do small competitions. Once a year we did a very big one, and then we went all in to see if we could win one. In this competition, we added an extension right on top of the existing building, which was rather rigorous because the original building is also used on the banknotes of Sweden. This was the end result, our proposal, and it wasn't even mentioned in the jury report. Why not? Because 1,050 teams had entered this competition. It was the last open European competition, and after that, they started with European tendering procedures. And so, in this last open competition, a lot of teams took their chances. But finding out that there were 1,050 teams entering this competition, I started calculating my investment afterwards. So we found out that we had invested 30,000 euros, and the success rate with more than 1,000 teams entering, you have 1 per mil chance of winning this competition. And then if you win, you have a 50% chance that a building like that the project is actually going to be built. So for 0.5 per mil chance, of having success in this competition, I invested this 30,000 euros. Then I thought, this is not a good business plan. Then I thought, if I do it differently, if I use this 30,000 euros for an interest budget, and I calculated with an interest of 4%, which was at that time the interest rate of mortgages, I would have had an investment budget of almost 800,000 euros. And with that investment budget, I could be an investor. I was able to buy a very nice farmhouse in the outskirts of Maastricht, in a rural area. And I was able to design 3 different houses into the existing building. And of course, I designed these apartments in a way that I would want to live there. And so it was very high end. And you can see that it's spacious, and really the meaning of investing in this building was to be able to get my first projects published in magazines, and therefore make a giant step in my career, which worked out. This house was published in NRC Handelsblad, so in a national newspaper, and in the end it got me a lot of attention. And when you are your own client, you can also do things that normally are very hard to do. For example, the huge window in the ceiling, but also this brick door. Having had the experience with investing in real estate, I thought I can also be a real client. I can be a developer. And from my development company, I'm going to show you 2 projects, which I will explain more into detail, Patch 22 and Top Up. And this started in 2009. I already told in 2005, I entered my last competition. Then I started doing real estate, and I started with these 3 apartments. Then I did another 2, then I did 8, and it grew bigger every time. In 2009, there was a tendering procedure by the city of Amsterdam, in which the city of Amsterdam would give the plot not to the highest bidder, highest financial bidder, but to the developer that proposes the most sustainable building. And I thought, this is my opportunity to beat the big developers. And that worked out. I teamed up with a former client of mine, with Klaus Ausoren. He is a building manager, and I, as an architect, we together can do most of the things that a developer would normally commission an architect and a building manager to. Patch 22 is located in Amsterdam North, which was a very it was a derelict rural area, not rural, industrial area. And Patch 22 is located on this side. On this picture, there's still a canal. And to enter this tendering procedure, first we had to hand in a vision document on what to do with this derelict industrial area. So we wrote a proposal about how to repair jeans. If you have a hole in your pair of jeans on the knees, you can, of course, do it in this way. You can take the sewing machine and close the gap, and therefore, technically, everything is all right again. But you can also add knee patches. And if you add knee patches to the jeans, and you keep adding knee patches, then in the end, you get a totally new fashion item. So we proposed to the city of Amsterdam to see this area as a pair of jeans in which, of course, patch 22 was located right on the knee. And we were able to design the most sustainable project, but the stupid thing is, the most sustainable project at that time was the most energy efficient project. And energy efficiency was achieved by adding installations, so adding machines to a building. So that's why there are a lot of solar panels, there's a transformator, there are pellet heaters, there's a rainwater basin, there are heat exchangers, so a lot of technique. But if we would have if we would have worked only with technique, then it would have made no sense to present this project today, because it would have already been old-fashioned. We decided to build the building with a renewable material. We were under the influence of the Cradle to Cradle book by Michael Braungart. And we thought, if we really want to make a sustainable building, we have to start using renewable materials, such as timber. Then, if you want to use timber, the first question people ask, especially in an apartment building, is how do you solve the fire resistance? And the fun thing of timber is that inside the tree, there's always a smaller tree. So if you just enlarge the dimensions of your structural items, then inside there will be enough structure left in case of a fire. And timber is very easy to calculate. It burns and chars with 0.8 millimeters per minute. So 120 minutes fire resistance, which is necessary in the Netherlands for the main structures. That would give you 96 millimeters of extra timber. But in the Dutch regulations, there are never two disasters at the same time. So when there's a fire, there won't be a storm. So you can have reduction of structural loads in case of a fire. So you need 80 millimeters of extra wood to be able to use wood as a structural piece in your building. At least if you want to keep it exposed. Because, for example, in Germany, where they build a lot with timber, they don't think timber is very special. So they just use gypsum to clad around the timber elements, and you don't see anything at all. Everything is white and plastered. Then we thought, if we really, really want to be sustainable, then we have to design a casco, a shell building, which could be used and reused for hundreds of years. And so therefore we thought we need to design a structure in which all insulations can be renewed in the decades to come. Of course, we also had to design the building, the looks of the building. And we were able to win this tendering procedure. But when you do an architectural competition, you normally get a fee, you normally get a price. And but if you win a tendering procedure, you get an invoice at the moment the city's alderman congratulates you with winning. So after winning, we had to pay a little more than 150,000 euros for the reservation fee of this plot. And of course, we didn't have this money. We didn't have this kind of money. We had some money, but not this much. So we quickly learned how to postpone this invoice. I already showed you that in the historical photograph, the building was on the side of a canal. And the historical buildings turned out to be the first factory of Fokker airplanes. And in the Second World War, this site was heavily bombed by the British Army. So when we received the invoice, we sent a letter to the city asking if they were absolutely sure that it was bomb-free, which of course they weren't. And that gave us the time to find money. And to find money, we had to excel in Excel. We calculated that the total investment for this building would be a little less than 10 million euros. And if we then calculated how much of this 10 million euros we would have to spend before we were able to sell it, that would be 1 million. From this million, we already had a lot of budget with the architect, but also in the building management. So we didn't have to pay for architectural building management. We had some money of our own, so we could invest it, but we were still short a little less than 300,000 euros. So this is what we needed to be able to develop this project so far that we were able to sell it. We went to 5 different contractors and we made them a proposal. We said, we have a construction budget for this building. At that time, still 1,000 euros per square meter, which was relatively cheap. At this moment in the Netherlands, it's already 2,000. But the construction budget alone would be 5 million euros. A contractor, we know from rule of thumb in the industry, will have an acquisition budget. So they will make a 10% profit on this 5 million euros. And from this 10% profit, they will use 10% as an acquisition budget. So they have an acquisition budget of 50,000 euros. Then we told the contractors, you don't have to spend this 50,000 euros because you don't have to find us, we are coming to you, so you don't have to spend anything. But we are going to develop this building. It will take us approximately 3 years. And if you divide this 50,000 euros by 3, you get a budget, an acquisition budget of 16,000 euros a year. If you get a loan with this 16,000 euros as interest, you can have a loan of 277,000 euros, which was more or less the figure that we needed. And we explained the contractor that they had to get the loan because we, as a starting developer, were not able to go to a bank. A bank wouldn't lend us any money, especially because it was 2010, which was in the middle of the deepest financial crisis since the Roaring '20s in the previous century. With this proposal, we found our contractor, which was Hillen & Rose in Amsterdam. And then we also had to find a real estate agent that was able to sell the building. But the building was made out of timber, and real estate agents, they normally go for the safe option. And timber was never used in apartment buildings in the Netherlands. So the first question she asked was, is it a safe investment? Otherwise, I don't think I can sell it. Then we showed our real estate agent this painting by Gerrit Adriaanszoon Bergheide. This is one of the most famous buildings of the Netherlands, famous paintings of the Netherlands. And this is the most expensive piece of real estate in the Netherlands. It's the Golden Arch, the Gouden Bocht, in the Herengracht in Amsterdam. And actually, it looks like brick, but the structure of these buildings is completely made of timber. And the foundations are timber piles. So all the brick, all the stone that you see is just cladding. when we showed this this painting to our real estate agency, she could see the value of our proposal, and she dared to go ahead. And we were able to invest in more ambitious renderings and to design selling brochures and everything that you need to sell real estate. On the inside, as I already explained, we kept a lot of timber inside, which is to keep timber in plain sight is easy in a single villa, but in an apartment building you need this 120 minutes fire safety. So that was really special that you could see the timber. And then we found out that we actually did something that was already researched at the TU Eindhoven in the 1960s. Professor John Habrake, he published this book, De Dragers en de Mensen, het einde van de massawoningbouw. In English, it supports an alternative to mass housing, in which he proposes a way to deal with buildings. He explained that the site, the geological site, will stay there forever. A structure will stay there for centuries, a skin for decades, a space plan for less decades, all the surfaces for a couple of years, and all the stuff that you buy at IKEA for months. And that was something that we also wanted to achieve, that we designed a building that would be there for centuries, but in which the use of the building could change over the decades without making any structural changes to the structure. So we thought, if we are able to position a toilet in the outmost corner of the floor plan, and we would be able to have enough sloping angle to a central core, in which there also were the meters, then we would have totally empty floor plans that could be changed into more or less apartments. Maximum 48 apartments, and the division walls are not load-bearing. This is the way it's technically done. We used hollow floors in which all the buyers can build their own installations. And when we found the buyers, we also had to organize events where they were able to discuss their floor plans with other buyers to get ideas. Because the fun thing is that if you ask the clients, the end buyers, to design their own homes, they design much weirder homes that I, as an architect, would be able to imagine. In the end, we had 26 owners in the building and 31 different floor plans. And I'll just go through some of them. This is a very large open space, an apartment of 150 square meters. This is an apartment of 200 square meters, in which even all the new walls were made in the same timber material. A very small apartment, 61 square meters. And in my opinion, a very ugly apartment. This is a style that is completely not my own. I hate the style, but I love the fact that it is in the building, that somebody who loves this style goes to Morocco, buys doors, goes to Spain to buy the floor tiles, and makes her own dream apartment. An apartment that is over 2 floors, in which that was big enough for the children to learn to bike inside. It was even possible to connect different parts of the building vertically. And in this apartment, they even installed the bathtub on the balcony. This is what the building looks like. And For architecture, I think it is very important that the building has an address. And I don't mean just an address with a house number. I mean an architectural address, that a building in the city tissue, an individual building, can be recognized. That if you live here and you will have people coming to visit you, that you can explain, I live in this building where the floor levels are stacked weirdly on top of each other, or where you can say it's the building with the diagonals in the facade. And that identifies a building within the city tissue. In the end, there were a lot of other architect developers that did more or less the same thing. And this turned out to be an open building environment where a lot of buildings are open to future changes. And we were able to acquire this plot when we were building this one. On this site, there was an industrial building which didn't look very interesting in the beginning, but it turned out to be an interesting building. In this building, in the back of the building, the Dutch National Telephone Company used it to store the transatlantic telephone cables and to test them. And so there were these interesting round walls with a lot of concrete, and also very important, a lot of concrete piles going to the first sand layer as a foundation. As a developer, you know that if you demolish a building and you have to retract piles in a former industrial area, the risk is very high that you get polluted ground to the surface, and risk is very expensive. So we decided to keep these interesting round walls, therefore not touching the soil and having no risk at all that we would get problems with pollution. So what we did is we kept these round walls. We got rid of the non-interesting parts of the existing building. Then we added a new concrete slab on top of these round walls. That was a pity because there was an existing slab of 1 meter thick concrete, but we couldn't keep it because the steel reinforcement calculations and drawings weren't in the city in the city's library anymore. And on top of this existing building, we added a timber concrete hybrid structure, and that's why the building is called top-up. It's simply a top-up of the existing structure. To build this building, we used an existing building system, which was called CD20. And the interesting thing is that it was a completely, it is a concrete building system, but it is based on timber connections. It uses steel corners in the concrete slabs to connect to steel elements inside the column. Normally, in the normal system, it is a concrete column, but we replaced the concrete by timber. Let's see. No. A small video of the way we build it. And this is what the building looked like when it was finished. So it was completely empty. And again, it was possible for all the buyers to install their own interiors inside the building. Again, a totally open floor plan with no shafts and no meters inside the apartments. And again, division walls that are not load bearing. And again, here we designed, I think we designed 24 different apartment layouts just to show the possibilities of this building to potential buyers. And again, none of the floor plans that we designed is actually executed. In this building, to be able for buyers to install their own installations, we added a top floor on top of the concrete floor plan on top of the concrete floor, and this is something the buyers had to install themselves, and they didn't do this with the main contractor. So they would be able to do that with their own contractor, or to do it themselves, or with their nephew or whoever. So it needed to be a very simple system to execute. And so it was made, it was designed in a way that you could build it with almost without building experience and just with a drilling machine. And again, all the interiors, they are totally different. And also here, when you give people the chance to design their own interiors, they do a lot weirder stuff than you think. Then you would propose as an architect, I would, especially in an apartment building, almost never propose to have your bathroom at the facade. But here it's both on both sides of the facade. And again, the bathtub is on the exterior part in the loggia. So this is the building from the northeast side. From the southwest side, the two buildings together. And again, with this building, I think it's important to give the building an architectural address. So in this building, it is like in Patch 22, every level is a single volume, which is stacked more or less like a palm tree on top of each other. And in the corners, where the two directions of the timber cladding would coincide, and you would never be able to solve them unless you make a diagonal line and then do it in two different directions. We added a small mirror, which was a solution that Jan Westra, one of my professors when I still studied at the Technical University, he said he always used it when he had an unsolvable problem. So that's all. Thank you.
So nice to see all my students. They are sitting there. I see. Do I recognize Luca or not? Hi. Yeah. Thank you very much, Tom. And great to see you, and great to see also that the students are taking advantage of having a little party during your presentation. Can I ask Basil and Koen also to join for the questions and yeah, afterward? Well,
Can you hear us?
We're here.
Yes, we hear everybody. Yeah, great. Maybe I can also ask everybody, if you have a question, raise your hand. So make sure that I can see it, that you have a question, or put a question in the chat. I'm not really sure that I always can see it, but I have to scroll the list the whole time then. So, or put your question in the chat, or in another way, make yourself known. Well, first of all, two completely different lectures. Great to hear that, and two completely different approaches also as as architecture office. But yeah, in a certain way, there are also things that collide, that get together, in the sense that there is this wish to really create something very specific and with great attention, and also the layer of research that is added into the projects. Well, let me start off with Basil, Koen. I will drop it in the group to ask you maybe some very specific question about your work. And what catched my attention, that apparently also the way of working in Flanders is different than the way of working in the Netherlands. There are a lot of single-family houses with a very strong connection to the client, a condition that in the Netherlands we have much less. We have much more to do with tenderings, public commissions, etc., housing blocks, housing corporations, and less with single-family houses, which are quite rare in the Netherlands. So I think it's also a great opportunity that you get there, where you can really make this kind of custom-made project. But when you were showing all the project, it showed like being so smooth. I always say to my students that very often you spend 1 month or 2 months making the design, and then afterwards you spend 4 years getting the thing done. So to get a contractor, to get the designs finalized, all the procedures, etc. So in your work, what were maybe you can sketch a bit this condition, maybe also of Flanders, of working in this condition with clients, private clients. So what were the biggest difficulties and challenges that you were facing, or that you normally face within your designs?
Well,
I guess it's not so smooth as you.
No. In an ideal world, it takes 2.5 years from the first contact with the client to a finished building. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it takes 4 years to get it done. Depends on how far you deviate from the building regulations. Sometimes that can be a struggle, so that you have to redo the planning with the building committee again, and then argument it and maybe go to a higher level. That's one part. But usually the smoothness of the project with the client itself, it goes pretty well, because we just spend a lot of time getting to know the client before accepting a project. And then the second part, when that is actually a little bit out of the way, we try to get all these elements together where the budget fits the concept, fits the building regulations. And yeah, of course, that's sometimes you have to rethink your project, because sometimes it doesn't fit exactly what all these parameters have. But once that is out of the way, yeah, you get to the point that the contractors had to be as much convinced as the clients. That means that we try to have a contractor that is really as much into the project and loves the project and loves the challenges of the projects. And after all these years, we know a lot of them. So that is actually not that much the problem, but we have to prepare the whole project and break it up in such a small pieces and give it to every contractor individually, so that's basically buildable in a normal price. If you would give this whole project to one contractor who has subcontractors, the prices go much higher. And we like to chip it into different parts and small parts, so that you have an overview as a contractor and use the drawings that made in that way that it's just stacking bricks. Although the result is sometimes much more complex, it feels like it's just, if you have the good plans, it's just bricks that you stack and concrete or wood you use. So in that sense, for me or for us, it's a normal procedure to get it. But it depends from project to project, the difficulty, sometimes also the location, because some locations have much more contractors than the other. I don't know if you want to add something.
Well, I think to give you guys an idea how difficult it is to create the projects we love to do is we have a team of 9 persons to do only 6 houses a year. Just to give you an idea how many people are working on the designs, on the 3D models, on all the cardboard models. So we have to put in a lot of effort to get the result that we really like. All this effort is into trying to convince the client in the first phase, which takes a lot of time and which takes a lot of conversation with them, but also afterwards changing the design when it's too expensive, or changing your details when the contractor doesn't know how to build it, or preparing everything for the contractor. So sometimes we are building details in cardboard just to show the contractor how we believe that it could be built, just to get some realistic prices from them, because especially when sometimes our projects are a bit complex, if you would ask the contractors to fix the problem for you, it wouldn't work. So
they would change the project that much that doesn't fit the vision that we have. So our point of view is to be flexible, to have this overview of what the idea is and the concepts, and go ahead together with the clients, with the contractors, and to get a good end result, you have to continuously keep designing until it's finally done. Actually, you just stop at that point when it's built.
We don't have a lot of discussions with our clients about architecture, but we do have a lot of discussions about budget and timing. Just to give you an idea how difficult it is. Yeah. It's most of the time it's too expensive and it takes too long. So.
But we are very clear in the beginning. That's usually to the clients also. That's the 2 moments we're gonna have discussions about budget and about it, because we want to work to the budgets. But sometimes you have to make choices, and these choices, and as a client, but also as an architect, continuously. And what is very important for the projects? What is something you can scratch and put the accent more to another part of the building or to another element in the building. So it's actually continuously kill your darlings, but you just have to go to a certain point. You can't go below, because then everything falls apart. So it's something we like to do, because it's always questioning, is it relevant what we are doing and how we are doing it?
Okay, that's a nice conclusion. I would like to ask you a question from, is it from Raoul or from Niels? Niels. It's a question for Tom. Can you read it or not?
No.
Okay, I will read it out loud, but maybe Niels, can you put your microphone on? Because you can also ask it yourself. Is that, I don't know. I think that we cannot hear him. So a question for Tom. While the city of Amsterdam has growing ambitions on sustainable building, I remember some regulations actually oppose your ambitions to build a sustainable building in case of top-up, like the rule to include a percentage of office space on each floor. How did you manage these opposing forces as a developer architect, or made the best out of it? And how did you convince them of the value, future value, of true open building in a time where sustainability is mostly measured in terms of energy usage, etc.? Okay, these are actually 2 questions, he says. Only the organizer can turn on my microphone. Bob, can you turn on the microphone? Or, well, did you understand the question, Tom, or do I have to repeat it?
Yes, now I can turn on my mic.
Okay.
Yeah, so thanks both of you for very interesting lectures. Very different indeed. Yeah, Tom, I admire your approach as a developing architect, and your story comes across to me as a sequence of luck and bad luck, like with the story of the foundations of the Stopper building, for example. And I really like how you
yes.
what do you call that? In the moment, decide what to do, to improvise. But I read somewhere that you have very high ambitions as an architect, but also as a developer, to create true sustainable buildings. But there are still, some rules that actually oppose that ambition, like the one of the floor space, office floor space. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Of course. Thank you for the question. It's well, in patch 22, what is interesting is that it has been developed during a financial crisis. At that time, there were not many buildings built. So we were one of the 4 buildings that were built in the years 2012 to 2014 in the whole city of Amsterdam.
Wow.
So you can imagine that the city of Amsterdam was willing to negotiate with us on certain terms and conditions. We had proposed in this tendering procedure that we wanted to build a completely flexible building in which there would be a free exchange of, for example, office space and dwelling space, even on the higher levels of the building. And in the beginning, the city didn't want that. The city wanted dwellings and office space to be separated. But as we explained, if you even don't know where the entrance of an apartment is going to be, how the hell would you be able to show the separation between office space and living space in the floor plan? So what we did in the end was we negotiated a new kind of land lease contract with the city of Amsterdam, in which all the apartments were at least 10% office spaces. And the term "at least" is very important, because that also means that it could be 100% office space, but it also meant that it couldn't be 100% living space. In the beginning, the city center wanted it the other way around. They wanted to make office spaces in which you were able to live. But then we found out that the banks wouldn't hand out mortgages on those criteria, but they would hand out mortgages on dwellings in which you are able to work. So you also have to take these financial terms and conditions into account if you want to design something flexible. In the second building in Top-Up, it was designed during a financial high. And the city didn't have enough people working for them to be able to to work on all the projects that were built in the city. So at that time, they told us, no, we don't want you to do anything special. Just keep it plain and normal and just make it sure that we can just tick boxes in the building permit. So we are not going to allow you to have a free layout of offices and dwellings. We want you to show us where the offices are and where the dwellings are. And
there goes your open building concept.
Yes, yeah. So both buildings are in the physical conditions of the buildings. Both buildings they are equally adaptable, but now with the legal documents that are also part of the building, it's legally more difficult in the future to use this flexibility. And if you start to dig into it, you find out where it really comes from. The city of Amsterdam has a land lease system in which office space is cheaper than dwelling space. And if you use office space for dwelling, then the city doesn't get enough money for it. So the city wants to be able to check on it. But if a public servant comes to your house and asks, can I see how you use your apartment? Then you can say, no, you cannot see it because you have to go to a judge first and you have to get a permit to enter my house. But if you want to enter an office space to check it, a civil servant can just enter. You don't have to go to a judge. So that's why the city of Amsterdam decided to go back to the old system and stick to a strict separation between offices and dwellings. And in sustainable building and especially in building adaptable buildings, the whole legal stuff is often forgotten. And it's if you really want to make sure that the buildings that are physically adaptable are also legally adaptable, then you also have to do research on the legal contracts, and you have to redesign them. So it goes further and further.
Is that something that you like to do, or do you have people around you that are very good in that?
Well, the thing is, if you have to go to court, you need a lawyer, but a lawyer is often 3 times more expensive than an architect. And most of the time, architects are also smart. So we are also good in rules and regulations. We know how to read the bouwbesluit very good, and we know how to find all the loopholes and everything. So we can also do that in legal stuff. So what I do together with my companion, I'm better at the legal stuff. So I do most of the legal stuff myself, and then I write the letters for the lawyer, and the lawyer just makes them read lawyerish.
Nice.
Okay, nice. Yeah, that's maybe also that as an architect, you are always indeed in this juggling with the rules and transforming them to your wishes. But I think that maybe that's also the case in Flanders, that you have to be able to read between the lines and to write your own rules and make them in such a way that your project fits within the rules. I know that Floris Alkemade, our former architect of state, called it's like dancing in a harness. And that as an architect, it's like dancing in a harness. In how do you call it? What's a harness in English?
Armor.
Armor. Yeah.
an armor, exactly, so that you try to dance, but you have all the rules which are kind of tying you up. And Niels, is your question answered?
Yes, thanks. I will give the time and the floor space to others to ask questions. Thanks,
Yeah.
Tom.
You're welcome.
I do not see hands, but I have so many questions. So I just start. If you have another question, put it in the chat. I will ask a question to both of the offices. And well, maybe you can later think who is answering them first. We are facing huge challenges on the moment in the building sector. 40% of the waste is being produced, 40% of energy consumption is within the build sector. Well, we have in the Netherlands now the task of building 1 million houses. We have a huge amount of challenges due to climate change, which are severely pressing also on our profession. And well, this is part of New European Bauhaus. The themes of New European Bauhaus are beauty together and sustainability. And that's why I give it in short a name, the LISA lectures, so the lectures in sustainable architecture. And so I'm very curious, so how do you think that these aspects will influence your work and how it's going to change the condition you are working in and you will be working in the future?
Tom, do you want to go first, or?
Well, let's see, is my mic on? Yes, my mic is on. Well, very shortly, I think with our approach, I'm already at the front line. I'm trying to show which direction we should head with, at least in larger scale apartment buildings. I think it's very necessary that we stop thinking about buildings as a financial construction with a lifespan of 50 years. I think the materials that we put into buildings, we should make sure that they stick in the buildings for centuries, and that we should design at least the shells of our buildings for a future use that we don't know yet, for a future generation that we don't know yet, that isn't even born yet. And so I think adaptability is really key. And then, of course, if you have designed adaptable buildings, you should also design the buildings for disassembly. That if in the future it's necessary to demolish buildings, for example, top-up can be demolished if in the future you would need a building that is twice as high. You could just disassemble it and use it as the top part of the building and put another building beneath it. So it's very necessary to also design it for disassembly, although you should design it in a way that it's never going to be disassembled. And if it gets disassembled, then I think it's also necessary that it gets disassembled in components that you can reuse. And if you cannot reuse the components, then the components should be designed in a way that they also can be taken apart into their main materials, and that then you can recycle the materials.
Yeah, but it's also that in a certain way it makes also buildings very non-custom made. That means that you need to be quite generic also in the composition, etc. Also the projects you have shown us, they have a certain, yeah, they are Casco, they are kind of neutral. How do you see that? Can't buildings be specific?
I think the two buildings that I've shown are their exteriors are very specific. They really have an architectural address. Patch 22 is certainly is iconic in a way, which was also needed because it was the first building in this area. So I think this neutrality doesn't have to show on the facade. The facade should be a unique building within the city tissue, so not neutral. But the interiors should be very, very neutral.
Yeah, but then your example of the Graux bocht with the interiors of these houses are super specific, although they're in the history, they're being used for everything. You know, there have been offices, houses, and nowadays there are high-end apartments, etc. So also the interiors can kind of evaluate or be reused in different ways.
Yeah, well, perhaps I was too quick in saying that the interior should be very neutral. The interiors of the building that I design should be very neutral, but it should be possible for the inhabitants to turn them into something very specific. And as you can see in the two buildings that I've shown, it happens. The interiors turn out to be hyper-specific. And I really like the fact that this hyper-specific, the individuality of the apartments doesn't show on the outside. Because I don't think that a building should be a collection of individual expressions. I think an apartment building should have a collective identity, which as a collective has an individual identity in the city again.
Okay, thank you. And Basil and Koen?
Well, we think that in Belgium, in Flanders, there's a difference that the housing market is a private market. And that's a big difference, I think, that most of the houses we build are individual projects, people that do build their own project for the future, for their families. And so the challenges we are facing now here in Flanders is that everything is already fully built. There's a building block for 3 plots, which we are very happy with. And so now the new challenges are to densify, take the leftover plots and build houses there, see what we can do in our cities with the existing city tissues. How can we live closer to each other? How can we live on top of each other? But all from a very individual approach, which is very difficult because you need ambitious clients who don't think of their own, but also think of the street and think of the community where they are working in, living in. So the challenge is now and will be in the future to create as much quality for your own without taking away any of the quality of the neighbors and of the houses around you. So we are beginning to build smaller, build more dense, very close to each other. So you need a lot of creativity to come up with interesting solutions for people to still be able to live harmoniously in a nice way next to each other.
Because before, and then you had bigger plots in Belgium, and everybody was very onto his privacy. So now, because we have smaller plots, the interaction between neighbors is something unavoidable. But if you create in a good way with quality architecture, and that's a subjective way, but at a certain point, it's also an objective way in the sense of the occulting stuff, creating vistas and stuff, creating the possibility to meet each other on the streets is important. And that for us is a more challenging way, because you need to think much more about it, how to see each other, not see each other, interact, not interact, get your privacy, and still, I think it's getting more interesting. We don't see it as a problem, but more as a form of a basic element to play with. And it gets more social, and less than more individual, in the sense that architecture before, because you had big plots, everybody wanted to retreat in his own way. And now you have, even if it's an individual house, you have to interact. And that's something we really like about it, because it gives an extra element to what architecture can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we in the pre-talk we had also a discussion about sustainability in Flanders, that regulations were much tighter than in the Netherlands. That in Flanders there is a step in front actually of the Netherlands. Do you see there also specific challenges that in this difference, that the requirements within sustainability are increasing almost every year, also in the Netherlands actually, but that it's going to to make that we have to also draw different kind of materials, etc., etc.
Well, a problem that we are facing now, that Tom also mentioned this in his lecture, is that we are now coping with the problem of energy buildings a lot with technology. Right? Better equipment, better techniques, warmtepompen, heating pumps, stuff like that. So we are able to make freestanding houses which have a very good score with lots of isolation and very good techniques in it. But for us, the challenge and the question we are trying to answer is, how can we simplify? How can we make more buildings, by the way we are building, make them better sustainable, and not needing all these techniques to just tick the boxes of a nice, good, well-isolated building. So.
We mean by that, that's if you can make a building really simple in its energy efficiency by creating cantilevers, canopies. Of course, you need your insulation, but without working with plastics. In Belgium, there's a lot of ways to make it damdicht. You have to work with plastics and tapes to make. I don't really believe in this kind of thing. I don't know how tape will react in 30 years. So if we can make breathable buildings again, and simple, just technically simple, that we can cope to manage to a certain level with all these things. And then you can still add the real techniques, like the solar panels and all the other stuff. You can add it to a building to make it more efficiency. And the other facts that Tom talked about is if you want to dismantle a building, how can we cope with that? Because now we use cement, a lot of cement and bricks, and it's a sort of a super glue. And if we could work, because we work a lot with old bricks, and these were with, it's not with cement, it's with caulk, with
clay.
Yeah, sort of a clay of lime. If we
free.
could work again with lime, and then that's because we work with clients directly. We have to convince them, and we have to convince the contractor. Because when I asked the question not so long ago, a few months ago, to a contractor, he said, "Yeah, I can work with that, but yeah, that will cost more." And yeah, he saw all kinds of problems. So if we want to start with that, before you can implement it, it takes maybe 2 years, because you have to convince the client. The client doesn't know how much it's going to cost. The contractor says, yeah. The first time he's going to ask too much money because its risk is big. But then if another architect asks it again, and another one, maybe he sees that there's a shift in the evolution. It would be nice to be able to dismantle a whole building again and to reuse these bricks. That's something we want to work on, but we have to layer by layer work on tip. And that's maybe different when you're a developer. You can, if you see your numbers fit, you can choose to do that. We have to persuade everybody to do it. But that's something we like to do, to keep it simple, without plastic, without tapes, without everything, and just by common sense. And then if you need it on top of that, all these techniques, okay, but these techniques will change and will evolve, and the solar panels will be twice as good in 10 years, or maybe 5 times as good. But if everybody has solar panels and everybody has batteries, we have another problem. And everybody has geothermy, we have another problem, because everybody's taking all the energy out of the ground, and then we have a fridge instead of a warm ground. So you have to diversify your approach to it, and techniques is one part, simplicity is another one, and the individual part of living and dwelling in Belgium is something typical about here. And if you bring everybody together in buildings, bigger buildings, you solve already a part of it, but then you have to change a whole culture in Belgium, and that's politically or mentally a big gap of change, and that's.
Yeah, but maybe also in that respect, it's interesting that you were, Tom, one of the first to build this high-rise in wood. Mm-hmm. And now it seems to be embraced by the whole building world. I can't open LinkedIn anymore without a kind of announcement on another conference on building in wood, etc. So that the wood is now much more accepted, and yeah, for all kind of buildings than it was when you started.
Yeah, the funny thing is, when we started it, of course, I can tell 2 stories. I can tell the sustainability story. We wanted to build with renewable materials, but when I started with Batch 22, I had never built in timber. The bird watching height, the small one, was in timber, but I wasn't a timber architect. But it was also because we were a small scale developer and we didn't have communications budget. And we thought, if we are going to build in timber and we are going to build a timber high rise, and in Dutch it's hoogbouw in hout, which is a nice alliteration, works fine always. We thought we are going to get a lot of free publicity. And that turned out to be true. When we proposed a high rise in timber, it was embraced all over. And suddenly we were in, with our project was in every newspaper, every magazine, all over the building related websites. So it gave us a lot of publicity, and that was also why we did it. So it's never just sustainability. It's always, you have to serve different purposes.
Okay, that's very smart. I have another question from the audience. Guus, can I ask Rob or Bob or Rick?
Everybody is able to unmute themselves now. So. Okay,
Guus van Beek. Maybe you can turn on also the camera so that we can see you.
Yes, of course. I hope it works.
Hi.
Hi. Wondering your ambition to want those legal requirements and always trying to reach to the boundaries and really make your dreams and buildings come true. Did you start to develop this after you finished your study, or maybe already during your study, or how did this kind of formed?
I didn't. Was this question for me or for?
For Tom.
Yeah,
for me.
Yeah.
Well, the second bird watching height I designed while graduating, so it was one of my 4 graduation projects. But well, I was always interested in money as a tool, and because you cannot just make architecture with ideals. You need money to build it. And so I found out already early on that I had to look at money not as something dirty, but as a tool that I should be able to master.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But it only started starting in 2003, 2005. I was confident enough to make the breach to to stop doing competitions and to say out loud, I'm not doing competitions, I'm going to do real estate. I'm going to invest, and I'm also going to make money. And that turned out to be a very good business model. Business-wise, my architectural office is more like a hobby. It doesn't bring in a lot of money. The money is made with the development processes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Then, yeah, that kind of was the answer.
Okay. Are there more questions from the audience? Well, then I would like to maybe a last hint from both offices. It's for students. What is the best, not tip, the best advice that you can give to the students? Maybe first Bizzle and Koen, and as a kind of closing off good advice moment.
Okay.
I
think for in Belgium, I think it depends a bit on where they would work. I have no idea if they want to work in Holland, in the Netherlands, I don't know. But in Belgium, I think one of the tips that we would provide is don't do it on your own. Make a team. Find someone to do it together with, or don't start your office just on one person, because it's a struggle. And it's interesting to have a nice team around you to go for to create architecture.
Yeah, for me, the advice I would give is like in every profession where you want to exceed, and I'll leave in the middle if you exceed or not, but if we exceed, but it's just go for it, and it's a lot of time and effort, but if you think it's worthwhile, do it, and but not doing it half. It's not necessary to do it half, just to go fully for it. And that's the only way to be a gymnast, to be an architect, to be whatever you want to be. Let's do it to the fullest.
Okay, thank you. And Tom?
I totally agree that you have to go all in. And another advice I would like to give is, when you're studying architecture, an architect is not the only thing you can become. It is a way to become an academic, and an academic can be a free thinker. And when you're trained as an architect, I think you have a lot of capabilities that are needed in a lot of professions in the future. And so don't limit yourself to being an architect. When you study architect, you're not just going to become an architect. You can also become a lawyer. You can become a good businessman. You can become a lot of things. And use your architectural training as something in which you learn to see relationships in complex problems. And the future will bring a lot of complex problems that need to be solved.
Okay, that's a beautiful sentence to conclude with. So I would like to thank you very, very much for these lectures, very inspiring. I would like to thank also the guys from Anarchy, especially Rick Jacobs, Bob, Wesley, for all their hard effort to make this possible, because I think it's great that all the students have the opportunity to see your work. And well, thank you very much. I hope that in the future maybe we can have a reunion of all the online lectures, and that we can party at the Zwarte Doos or wherever in Eindhoven. So I would say cheers. This is a glass. Yeah, it's a glass of wine. Cheers. And I hope you had a great evening, and it was great seeing you.
Bye-bye.
We are going to connect in the final. There is also a meeting afterwards. So Tom and Basil and Koen, if you can log in to that. Okay. I would say goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Where do we have to log in?